I'm a 28-year-old woman, and I've been married to my husband, Ben, who's 32, for 3 years now. We first met at our mutual friend Sarah's wedding. Sarah and I had been college roommates, and Ben was a childhood friend of Sarah's husband. I remember being immediately drawn to Ben's easygoing nature and quick wit. He made me laugh throughout the reception, and we ended up talking until the early hours of the morning. After that initial meeting, Ben and I started dating. He worked as an engineer at a local tech company, while I was teaching at a nearby elementary school. We came from different backgrounds. I grew up in a middle-class family in a small town, while Ben's family was more well-off and lived in the city. Despite these differences, we connected over our shared love of outdoor activities and our dreams of starting a family someday. Our relationship progressed quickly. Within a year, we had moved in together, and a year after that, Ben proposed during a hiking trip in the mountains. It felt like everything was falling into place, and I was excited about our future together. The wedding was a small affair, with just close family and friends. That's when I first met Ben's sister, Emma. She's 2 years older than Ben, and from the moment we were introduced, I sensed a coolness from her. At first, I chalked it up to her being protective of her younger brother, but as time went on, it became clear that her dislike of me ran deeper. Emma worked in finance and had a high-powered job in the city. She lived a lifestyle that was very different from mine, and she never hesitated to point out the differences. At family gatherings, she would make subtle comments about my job, saying things like, "Oh, teaching must be so rewarding. It's nice that some people can prioritize fulfillment over financial stability." Or she would ask Ben, in front of me, if he missed the luxuries he had growing up, now that he was living a more modest life with me. I tried my best to win Emma over. I went out of my way to compliment her achievements, asked for her advice on financial matters, and even attempted to bond over our shared love for Ben. But nothing seemed to work. Emma remained distant and often critical of me. Despite the tension with Emma, the first 2 years of our marriage were mostly happy. Ben and I were settling into our life together, saving money for our future goals. We had plans to buy a house in the next year or two and start trying for a baby soon after. We were both excited about these plans and worked hard to make them a reality. The real trouble started about 6 months ago when Emma got engaged to her longtime boyfriend, Peter. They had been dating for 5 years, and Peter worked in the same industry as Emma. From what I understood, they both had well-paying jobs and lived quite comfortably. Emma immediately began planning an extravagant wedding. She talked about designer dresses, exotic flower arrangements, and a destination ceremony at a luxury resort. While I was happy for her, I couldn't help but feel a bit overwhelmed by the scale of her plans. One evening, Emma invited Ben and me over to her apartment for dinner. After the meal, she brought up the topic of her wedding. She explained that she and Peter had their hearts set on a particular venue, but it was more expensive than they had initially budgeted for. Then, she turned to us and said, "That's why I wanted to talk to you both. I was hoping you could contribute $10,000 towards the wedding. After all, family helps family, right?" I was taken aback by the request. $10,000 was a significant amount of money for us, especially considering our own financial goals. I tried to explain this to Emma as gently as possible, saying that while we were happy for her, we had been saving for our own future and couldn't afford such a large contribution. Emma's face immediately darkened. She turned to Ben and said, "I can't believe this. We're talking about my wedding day here. Don't you want it to be perfect?" Ben looked uncomfortable, caught between his sister and me. I suggested that perhaps we could help in other ways, like assisting with DIY projects or helping to coordinate vendors. But Emma wasn't interested. She accused me of being selfish and not understanding the importance of family. The dinner ended on a sour note, with Emma barely speaking to me as we left. On the drive home, Ben was quiet. When I asked him what he thought about Emma's request, he said he understood where I was coming from but also felt bad about not being able to help his sister. We agreed to look over our finances again to see if there was any way we could contribute something, even if it wasn't the full amount Emma had asked for. Over the next few weeks, Emma's behavior towards me worsened. She would call Ben frequently, often when she knew he was home with me, and talk for hours about her wedding plans. If I answered the phone, she would barely acknowledge me before asking to speak to Ben. At family gatherings, she would make pointed comments about how some people prioritize family while others are too focused on themselves. I tried to stay out of it as much as possible, hoping that Ben would handle the situation with his sister. I didn't want to come between them, but I also felt that Emma's behavior was unfair and manipulative. Then, about a month after the dinner at Emma's, I noticed that Ben had become distant. He stopped discussing our financial plans with me and seemed preoccupied. I assumed he was stressed about work or the situation with Emma, so I tried to give him space. One day, I went to transfer some money from our joint account to pay a bill, only to find that the account had been frozen. Confused and worried, I called Ben at work. He was evasive on the phone and said we would talk about it when he got home. That evening, Ben sat me down and told me that Emma had shown him proof that I had been hiding money from him in a separate account. According to Emma, I had been secretly saving money for myself while claiming we couldn't afford to help with her wedding. I was shocked and hurt by the accusation. I had never hidden any money from Ben, and I couldn't understand where Emma had gotten this idea. I asked to see the proof Emma had shown him, but Ben said he didn't have it with him. He just kept saying that Emma had sent him screenshots of some bank account in my name. I tried to show Ben our financial statements, proving that all our money was accounted for, but he seemed reluctant to look at them. He kept saying that Emma wouldn't lie about something like this and that he needed time to process everything. Feeling betrayed and frustrated, I decided to stay with a friend for a few days to give Ben some space and to clear my own head. As I packed a bag, I couldn't help but wonder how our relationship had come to this point, and what Emma's true motivations were in driving this wedge between us. Update when it's been about 3 weeks since I left our home to stay with my friend, Lisa. These weeks have been some of the most challenging and confusing of my life. When I first arrived at Lisa's apartment, I was in a state of shock. I couldn't believe that Ben, the man I had built a life with, could so easily believe his sister over me. For the first few days, I kept expecting my phone to ring, for Ben to call and tell me it had all been a misunderstanding. But the call never came. I threw myself into my work at the school, staying late to grade papers and plan lessons, anything to keep my mind occupied. Lisa was incredibly supportive, offering a listening ear whenever I needed to talk and giving me space when I needed to be alone. After a week of silence, I finally reached out to Ben. I sent him a text asking if we could meet and talk. His response was brief and noncommittal, saying he was busy with work but would let me know when he was free. Another week passed before he finally agreed to meet. We decided to meet at a neutral location, a small coffee shop halfway between our house and Lisa's apartment. When I saw Ben walk in, my heart sank. He looked tired and stressed, with dark circles under his eyes. As he sat down across from me, I realized this was the first time in our relationship that I felt like I was sitting across from a stranger. I started the conversation by asking him how he was doing. He shrugged and said he was managing. When I asked about work, he gave short, one-word answers. It was clear he wasn't interested in small talk. Finally, I brought up the reason for our meeting. I asked him if he had had time to think about the situation and if he was ready to look at our financial records together. Ben's response surprised me. He said he had already looked into it and discovered that Emma's proof wasn't as solid as he had initially thought. It turned out that when Ben tried to verify the bank account Emma had shown him, the bank had no record of any account under my name. When he confronted Emma about this, she claimed that the account was in my maiden name and that I had opened it years ago before we got married. I was relieved that Ben had finally started to question Emma's story, but I was also frustrated that it had taken him this long to do so. I asked him why he hadn't come to me first with this information. His response was that he still wasn't sure what to believe. I couldn't hold back my frustration any longer. I told Ben that I felt betrayed not just by his sister's lies, but by his willingness to believe them without giving me a chance to defend myself. I reminded him of our years together, of the trust we had built, and asked him how he could throw that away based on some screenshots his sister had shown him. Ben sat there in silence for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his words cut deep. He said, "Even if Emma's story isn't true, you shouldn't have refused to help her with the wedding. She's my sister, and family should come first." I was stunned. After everything that had happened, after Emma's lies had been exposed, Ben was still defending her. I tried to explain again why we couldn't afford to give Emma the money she wanted, how it would set back our own plans for our future. But Ben didn't seem to be listening. As our conversation went on, it became clear that this wasn't just about the money anymore. Emma had managed to plant seeds of doubt in Ben's mind about our relationship, and those doubts had taken root. Ben started bringing up other issues, times when he felt I had been controlling with our finances, or instances where he thought I had put my needs before his family's. I left the coffee shop feeling more hopeless than ever. It seemed that no matter what I said or did, I couldn't compete with the influence Emma had over Ben. I realized that this wasn't just about Emma wanting money for her wedding, she had been trying to undermine our relationship from the beginning. Over the next few days, I learned that Emma had been busy spreading her version of events to the rest of Ben's family. Ben's parents, who had always been kind to me, suddenly became distant. They stopped inviting me to family dinners, and when I did see them, they were polite but cold. Ben's cousins, who I had gotten close to over the years, started avoiding me at social gatherings. I overheard snippets of conversations where my name was mentioned along with words like secretive and greedy. It felt like my entire world was crumbling around me. What hurt the most was that Ben did nothing to defend me. When I asked him to talk to his family, to tell them the truth about Emma's lies, he said he didn't want to get involved. He claimed he was trying to stay neutral, but to me, his silence felt like a betrayal. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself questioning everything about our relationship. Had I been naive to think that Ben and I could build a life together when his loyalty to his sister was so strong? Had Emma seen something in me from the beginning that made her dislike me, something that Ben was only now starting to see? I'm still staying at Lisa's apartment, unable to face the idea of returning to a home where I no longer feel welcome or trusted. Ben and I talk occasionally, but our conversations are strained and awkward. I feel like I'm losing him, and I'm not sure if our marriage can survive this. I've started seeing a therapist to help me process everything that's happened. She's helping me work through my feelings of betrayal and anger, and to figure out what I want for my future. Right now, I'm not sure if that future includes Ben. Part of me wants to fight for our marriage, to prove to Ben and his family that Emma's accusations are false. But another part of me wonders if it's worth fighting for a relationship where trust has been so thoroughly broken. I'm left questioning not just my marriage, but my own judgment. How could I have been so wrong about the person I thought I knew better than anyone else in the world? Update 2. It's been a few months since my last update, and I finally have some answers about what's been going on. The truth came out in a way I never expected, during a family dinner that I had been reluctant to attend. Ben had been trying to convince me to come to his parents' house for their monthly family dinner. I had been avoiding these gatherings, feeling unwelcome and judged by his family. But Ben insisted, saying it was important for us to present a united front. Against my better judgment, I agreed to go. The dinner started off tense. Emma was there with her fiancé, Peter, and she barely acknowledged my presence. Ben's parents were polite but distant, and I could feel the weight of unspoken accusations in the air. We made it through the main course with stilted small talk, everyone carefully avoiding any mention of Emma's upcoming wedding or the financial situation. It was during dessert that things finally came to a head. Emma started talking about her wedding plans, pointedly mentioning how certain things had to be scaled back due to unexpected budget constraints. She looked directly at me as she said this, and I felt my patience snap. I put down my fork and asked Emma outright why she had lied to Ben about me having a secret bank account. The room went silent. Ben's parents looked confused, and Peter seemed uncomfortable. Emma's face flushed red, but she quickly composed herself and denied knowing what I was talking about. That's when I turned to Ben and asked him to tell everyone about the fake bank statement Emma had shown him. Ben hesitated, looking torn, but finally he spoke up. He explained about the screenshots Emma had sent him, and how the bank had confirmed that no such account existed. Emma's facade cracked. In a moment of what seemed like panic, she blurted out, "Okay, fine. I made it up. Are you happy now?" The room erupted into chaos. Ben's parents started asking questions, Peter looked shocked, and Ben just sat there, stunned. Through tears of frustration and anger, Emma admitted that she had fabricated the whole story about the secret bank account. She said she felt desperate after we refused to give her the money for her wedding. She thought that if she could make me look bad, Ben would feel guilty and eventually agree to help with the wedding costs. I sat there, feeling a mix of vindication and exhaustion. All these months of stress and heartache, all because Emma couldn't accept that we had our own financial priorities. Ben looked devastated, realizing the extent to which he had been manipulated by his sister. Ben's parents were furious with Emma. They demanded to know how she could do something so deceitful, especially to her own brother. Peter, Emma's fiancé, got up and left the house without a word. I later learned that this incident was the final straw for him, and he broke off their engagement shortly after. In the aftermath of Emma's confession, Ben apologized to me over and over. He said he felt horrible for doubting me, for not standing up for me to his family, for letting Emma's lies come between us. But as I sat there listening to his apologies, I realized that the damage had already been done. Yes, the truth had finally come out. But the fact remained that Ben had been willing to believe the worst about me based on some flimsy evidence from his sister. He had frozen our joint account, accused me of lying, and stood by while his family ostracized me. All without once really listening to my side of the story or standing up for me. I told Ben that while I appreciated his apology, I couldn't just forgive and forget. The trust between us had been severely damaged, and it wasn't something that could be repaired overnight. I explained that I needed time and space to process everything and figure out what I wanted. Ben agreed to give me the space I needed. I moved back into our house temporarily, mostly because I didn't want to impose on Lisa any longer. But things between Ben and me remained tense and awkward. Every conversation felt loaded, and I found myself second-guessing everything he said and did. As for Emma, Ben told her that she was no longer welcome in our house. He said he needed time to reevaluate their relationship and that he couldn't trust her right now. I was glad to hear this, but part of me wondered if it was too little, too late. Update 2 continued. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my relationships with Ben's parents and the rest of his family. They were apologetic about how they had treated me, realizing they had been misled by Emma. While I appreciated their efforts to make amends, I couldn't help but feel a lingering sense of hurt. It was difficult to forget how quickly they had been willing to believe the worst about me. During this time, I also started to reevaluate my own priorities and what I wanted for my future. The whole ordeal had forced me to confront some hard truths about my marriage and my place in Ben's family. I realized that I had often put my own needs and feelings aside to avoid conflict, especially when it came to Emma. Now, I was determined to advocate for myself more strongly. Ben and I started couples therapy, hoping to rebuild the trust that had been broken. In our sessions, we talked about communication, boundaries, and how to handle family conflicts in the future. While these conversations were necessary, they were also emotionally draining. Each session felt like reopening a wound that hadn't quite healed. As for Emma, I heard through mutual friends that she was struggling in the aftermath of her confession. Her relationship with Peter had ended, and she had to cancel her elaborate wedding plans. Part of me felt sympathy for her, remembering how excited she had been about her wedding. But a larger part of me couldn't forget the pain and chaos her actions had caused. Ben tried to maintain a relationship with Emma, which became a source of tension between us. While I understood his desire to reconcile with his sister, I couldn't help but feel uncomfortable every time he mentioned meeting her or talking to her on the phone. It felt like a reminder of how easily he had taken her side over mine. As the months passed, I found myself questioning whether our marriage could truly recover from this betrayal. The trust that had once been the foundation of our relationship now felt shaky and unreliable. I often caught myself wondering if Ben would choose his sister over me again if a similar situation arose in the future. Update 3 It's been 6 months since my last update, and I've made a decision that I never thought I'd have to make. I'm ending my marriage to Ben. This wasn't an easy choice, and it's one that I've agonized over for months. But in the end, I realized it was the right thing to do for my own well-being and happiness. After Emma's confession, Ben and I tried our best to rebuild our relationship. We continued with couples therapy, had long talks about our future, and even went on a weekend getaway to try and reconnect. But despite these efforts, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed between us. The final straw came when I discovered that Ben had been secretly meeting with Emma behind my back. I found out when I overheard him on the phone, making plans to meet her for coffee. When I confronted him about it, he admitted that he had been seeing her regularly for the past month. Ben tried to justify his actions by saying he was just trying to keep the peace within the family. He said he felt torn between his loyalty to me and his love for his sister. But to me, this felt like another betrayal. We had agreed to be transparent about our interactions with Emma, and Ben had broken that promise. This discovery made me realize that Ben would always prioritize his relationship with Emma over our marriage. Even after everything that had happened, he couldn't set firm boundaries with her or stand up for our relationship. I told Ben that I couldn't continue living like this, always wondering if I could trust him or if he was hiding something from me. I explained that while I understood his desire to reconcile with his sister, I couldn't be part of a marriage where I constantly felt like I came second. The decision to end our marriage wasn't easy. We had built a life together, and there were many good memories mixed in with the painful ones. But I knew that staying in this relationship would only lead to more hurt and resentment in the long run. I moved out of our house and found a small apartment of my own. The process of separating our lives has been difficult and emotional, but it's also been freeing in a way. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm putting myself first. As for Emma, I heard that she's been trying to make amends with the family. She's started therapy to work on her issues, which I hope will help her in the long run. While I can't forgive her for what she did, I no longer feel angry when I think about her. Instead, I feel a sense of sadness for the relationships that were damaged by her actions. Looking back on everything that's happened, I can see now that there were warning signs I ignored early in my relationship with Ben. I had always hoped that with time, Emma would accept me and that Ben would learn to set boundaries with his family. But now I understand that some patterns are too deeply ingrained to change. As I start this new chapter of my life, I'm focusing on healing and rediscovering who I am outside of my marriage. I'm reconnecting with old friends, throwing myself into my work as a teacher, and even considering going back to school for a master's degree, something I had put on hold when Ben and I were planning our future together. While this isn't the outcome I had hoped for when I married Ben, I'm trying to look at it as an opportunity for growth and self-discovery. I know there will be difficult days ahead as I navigate life as a single woman again, but I also feel a sense of hope for the future. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's the importance of standing up for yourself and not compromising your self-worth for anyone, not even family. I hope that by sharing my story, Others might recognize similar patterns in their own relationships and have the courage to address them before it's too late. For now, I'm taking things one day at a time and looking forward to building a future on my own terms.